Well. It's a very different USC Monday show here at the Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers isn't here, and it's different also because like none of us were expecting what we saw on Saturday night. Matt Zemek here with Tim Prangley here at the Voice of College Football, and like Caleb Williams throwing three first half interceptions, Alex Grinch's defense basically being irrelevant to the outcome of the game. Those are two plot points right there that no one was anticipating. Not one soul, not even the most diehard Notre Dame fan would have predicted what happened on Saturday night. And not even the most diehard Oklahoma fan would have predicted that, Caleb Williams is going to throw three picks and Alex Grinch's defense is basically going to be just a bystander not in a negative way, but just like that did not matter. The matchup between Alex Grinch and Notre Dame's embattled offensive coordinator, Jared Parker, just never materialized. It was never a thing. If there's one negative thing you can say about the USC defense in this game, it's that when USC got within 24-13, the defense allowed a touchdown drive, on the very next possession for Notre Dame. But like that was the only real black mark of a 60-minute game. So like this defense was not the problem, allowed only 253 yards to Notre Dame. Like it just was peripheral. Like we were expecting the Alex Grinch, Jared Parker matchup to matter. It just didn't. Like that's not the way it played out. But what we do have is a genuine crisis at USC football. Now, some will say, this is the sky falling. Well, I don't know if the sky is falling, but we're certainly on track to have a failed season at USC. And a failed season, and this was pretty consistent for me throughout the off season, coming into the early weeks of this season, I was pretty plain. Like you absolutely have to make the Pac-12 championship game. Absolutely. And really, you need to win the Pac-12 championship. Now, whether or not you make the playoff, like that was up for debate, but you need to be in that Pac-12 title game and you need to win the Pac-12 title that slipped through your fingers a year ago in Las Vegas. And let's keep in mind that one of the advantages USC had if it got to the Pac-12 championship game was that USC's doesn't play on Thanksgiving weekend. Washington, Oregon, the rest of the Pac-12, they play on Thanksgiving weekend. So if USC could just qualify for Las Vegas, it would have a week off before that game on Friday, December 1st. So like it's advantage USC if the Trojans can get to Las Vegas. And I know that this loss was to Notre Dame. It's a non-conference loss, but let's be honest. Pete Carroll has Tell the Truth Monday, right? This is Tell the Truth Monday here at the Voice of College Football. Does anyone think that USC has a reasonably good chance of beating either Washington or Oregon right now? Tell the Truth Monday. Does USC have a reasonable chance, like 35-40% chance of beating either the Huskies or the Ducks after what you saw on Saturday in Seattle preceding, USC's faceplant in South Bend? Like Washington, Oregon, that was a big boy game. That was a man's game. Felt like a main event, looked like a main event, hitting, physicality, teams, responding to each other's punches. Like that was a big boy game. And USC was a big boy team for much of last season. And USC is not a big boy team right now, not even close. And as we sift through the wreckage of this Notre Dame game, what can we say about why this team actually looks worse than 2022 instead of being better? Year one going to year two, you're supposed to have more stability, more familiarity within the system, within everything that's going on.
Do we think that they could still win the conference championship? Was that your question to us? Do we think we have a legitimate chance of winning the conference? The answer to that is a resounding yes. Because this team, we've seen it. This team, if it plays up to its talent level, it can beat Washington at home. I'm sure of that. If they're Autzen, the way Oregon's playing, it's gonna take a really great game And if only we had a special guy a generational quarterback, like, I don't know, like a Heisman Trophy winner to lead us to victory up in Autzen. To say that there's no way they can do it, I'm not even coming close to that. Do I think it's likely? I don't think it's likely that we beat both Oregon and Washington. But
do you think it's likely? Do you think it's likely we beat one of them?
I think that it's likely we split. Yeah. And here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say the reason why I'm saying it is because one, it's we're playing Washington at home. If we were playing up in Autzen and up in Seattle, then I would say probably not. This team has clearly shown itself to be a different team on the road, going back to last year as well. But at home, until I'm pretty sure, I think we're still undefeated under Lincoln Riley at home. So that game being at home is a huge boost. I think that Washington's playing lights out ball right now. I think that Oregon has shown me a lot that I didn't think they had. The good news is they still have Lanning calling plays up there. You never know when he's going to lose a game for them. So there's a bonus for us. But the issue here is on the offensive line, 100. It's just 100%. It's a number of things, but really the big issue here is on the offensive line. I think losing Gino Quinones now, we kind of thought it was an afterthought a couple of weeks ago. I mean, not an afterthought, but really didn't realize. But now looking back on that, he may have added some stability to an offensive line, especially on that right side that's reeling right now. And I do believe that Quinones might have been a difference maker. He was fighting for a starting job when he got injured. So I think that now is looming as a big loss that seemed like a big loss then, but now it seems like a massive loss to the Trojans. They had to throw this line together, patchwork. They did. You know, I think it's easier to bring in wide receivers from the portal and plug them right in. It's not the same thing. Look at this offensive line, you guys. So you have a brand new starting right tackle in Tarquin. You got a brand new starting right guard and Jarrett Kingston. You move your right guard from last year over to center with Justin Dedich, and then on the left side you got Pregnon, right? Those guys are all brand new to either their position or the line. Yes, these are all veteran guys, but they haven't played together. And if one unit you need to gel as a team, it's them. They came in late. We talked about the transfers. They came in late. Pregnon was injured, right, all the way through fall ball. The other guys didn't play spring ball because they were transfers. So this has been kind of a work in progress, and it's now as these defenses get better and better, they're being exposed. And I went back and watched the game a little bit more. The issue was I kept saying, why isn't he stepping up? Why isn't Caleb stepping up? You know, why is he trying to roll out? Because they were kicking him in. They were not allowing him to roll out. Every time he did that backwards rollout, he was met by another Irish player. And so they're keeping him in the pocket. He did try stepping up. He did, I actually went back and looked. I was like, why aren't these throws getting out on schedule? Why aren't they getting out on time? They were, but when they're getting batted down at the line. There's no passing lanes. There's massive issues up front on the offensive line. And I don't think that as much as Oregon's getting touted as having this offense, they do not have corners like we saw in South Bend. So that also plays into this. Yes, I think Oregon's defense is good. I think their pass rush is absolutely legit, much better than the Irish. But overall, I don't think they have a better offense than the Irish. I just don't. I don't. And Washington's defense is playing better, is not an elite defense as well. So having them at home, the wild card here is, at the beginning of the season, the easy call is Autzen. Right? A tough place to play, a place that we've traditionally not played that great, loud, raucous on the road, everything our offensive line struggles with, right? But yeah, Matt, I mean, I don't know. I think you're throwing the white flag a little too early here. I think this team has shown us. Everyone here pretty much is proven except for this offensive line. They're going to have a couple more weeks to get this thing sorted out on the offensive line. But when they bring Washington in, I think this would be a big, big test.
Yeah, and of course, one of the plot points of this Utah game coming up is, we don't know if Cam Rising is going to play, but like the needle is moving toward Cam Rising not playing because he didn't play against Cal, and it seems as though this thing is just going to be pushed back even more. He might not be ready until November, but on the off chance that Cam Rising does play, and again, that doesn't seem likely right now, but if he does play, it's his season debut. And so even though Cam Rising is a baller, and he beat USC twice last year. The idea that you can just come in cold with all the uncertainty about his knee, and remember, he said this wasn't just an injury, like he blew out his knee, a severe injury. The idea that Cam Rising can just come in off the street and immediately play well, he probably needed at least one tune-up before USC to have the expectation that he would play really well. So, either you get no Cam Rising or you get a diminished, uncertain Cam Rising who probably won't take many chances in the passing game. Like, it's a game that USC should definitely be expected to win. But that it also means that if the Trojans do not answer the bell, because we've been saying, Tim, the Arizona State game was a wake-up call. The second half against Colorado was a wake-up call. The Arizona game was a wake-up call. And the Trojans didn't wake up against Notre Dame in a really big-time game where they needed to show something special. So if you don't wake up after several wake-up calls, that tells me that you just don't have as much quality as was previously thought. But it does mean that, if Utah's coming in limited on offense, much as Notre Dame was. Now, Notre Dame's limitations were not really injury related, worrying about whether their number one quarterback could play. Notre Dame was just mediocre, and Notre Dame looked pretty mediocre on offense for much of the game. But of course, USC gift wrapped Notre Dame lots of touchdowns. But to get back to Utah, coming in without Cam Rising, like USC is supposed to win against a Cam Rising-less Utah team. And if the Trojans can't put this game to bed, I mean, we have to call it a crisis. I mean, I can say right now, before the Utah game, before USC has lost a Pac-12 game this season, all right, fine. USC's not facing a crisis just yet. If USC loses to Utah without Cam Rising at home, then it's definitely a crisis. Josh Henson did a really good job with the 2022 offensive line, but he had Andrew Voorhees, Brett Nealon, and also Bobby Haskins from the portal. But he had from the Clay Helton regime, he had Voorhees and Nealon. And we can really appreciate, folks, watching here at the Voice of College Football, how good those two guys were. And I know, Tim, that one of the big points of emphasis for you in terms of the USC offensive line was continuity, and how all the guys from last year, were very familiar playing together. It's not just being comfortable in their own roles, but knowing how to communicate and link up together as an offensive line. And you don't have that same connectivity with this year's offensive line. But as much as connectivity and playing together matter to a certain extent, you also have to look at just the individual quality of the individual linemen involved. And Voorhees and Nealon clearly set the bar very high. And the other guys on this offensive line, they're not matching that standard. And retracing the point I made earlier about, going from year one to year two, and what a coaching staff inherits, and then what happens when the coaching staff begins to have a higher percentage of its own players as you get into year two and then year three, you've seen slippage. And so, like Josh Henson, I don't think his position on this staff is on the line to the extent that Alex Grinch's position is, or also to the extent that strength coach Benny Wiley's position should be. But nevertheless, like Josh Henson does need to coach this line really well over this next month against these big boy opponents, Utah, Washington, Oregon. I'm not predicting that this will happen, but if USC does get physically overpowered consistently by these higher end Pac-12 opponents, Lincoln Riley will face a real decision about who should be his offensive line coach next year.
I'm nowhere near ready to pull the plug on Henson. I mean, I don't know if I talked to you or if it was Gabe from Trojan Blade. I can't remember, but what he did last year, granted, I'm giving a little tip to Clay McGuire, who did a great job getting the offense the previous year again and kind of getting the momentum. They put together the offensive line, and I said it way back then that it was one of the strengths of the team way back. But what he did last year with his line, the protection, everything. I mean, I was very impressed with it. And the good news is for people that are freaking out about the portal, etc., the players, etc. You know, we had a great recruiting class. The year before they came in late. You're not going to get much of a class there. But you know, Elijah Page, Amos Taulele, Micah Banuelos, Alani Noah, and Tobias Raymond. I think that Josh Henson's absolutely going to mold those guys. I want Henson to stay, make those guys absolute front runners. I'm very excited about that lineup of freshmen. I think that all those guys have a very good chance to start, to be honest with you. And that's just, you know, you got centers, guards, true tackles in that group. I really have a lot of faith in that. But that's down the road. That's a year or two away. This year, you know, maybe we were just asking too much. Like you said, you're replacing 2 All-Americans. It's a complete shuffle. I mean, nobody's really playing where they played last year. You know, I mean, Monheim got some time, but I mean, other than that, this is all new. You know, yes, you did have Dietich playing, but he's playing right guard. He wasn't playing center. There have been a lot of issues with center. I know I was talking to someone. They said he's dinged up. I get it. But there have been some snapping issues. There have been some line calls. There have been some weird stuff going on front that needs to get tightened up. And I don't know if we're putting too much on this offensive line to think this was going to be a national championship offensive line. It was kind of thrown together. It looks like individually, these guys are all coming with their accolades. These are all great athletes. They have the bona fides to show up at USC that we thought that they were going to come in, plug and play, and let's go again. But you know, it's not like that sometimes on the offensive line. And I think we were really spoiled last year with Nealon having a multi-year starter at center. You just cannot overstate having a quality center and what that can bring to your offense. And I think we're seeing some struggles because of it.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that does need to be mentioned here. I mean, Tim, like you make sound points in terms of how much of a reshuffle this was, and you know, Dietich specifically having to play a different position. You know, it's not just the other pieces on the offensive line, but that your veteran is having to play a different position relative to last year. I mean, those are salient, important points. But also, like that is also the nature of college football and college sports in general. That roster turnover, it's part of the deal. Like, it's rare to have a group of seasoned upperclassmen guys, you know, who all come back and who all know how to play together, such as what USC had last year with Voorhees, Nealon, and Dietich, you know, being 3 anchors, and then you also having Bobby Haskins, a seasoned veteran. You know, you're going to have turnover. Like last year was not like a normal situation for a college football program's offensive line. Usually you have to deal with, you know, a lack of retention. Usually you have to deal with different pieces in different spots. So like, that's not the norm. That was like a rare confluence of favorable factors for USC. So of course it's a reshuffle this year. Like, that's what college coaching staffs and college offensive line coaches need to do. Now, I will say that, you know, the guys that Henson, the younger guys that Henson has recruited, brought into the program, that's an excellent reason to make sure that Henson gets 2024 to, you know, carry forward some momentum and build his relationships with the young guys. I mean, like, I do think that Henson, all things considered, should stay for 2024. But I would also point out that if this offensive line just collapses, if this offensive line doesn't get off the mat, and you know, again, we saw how physical Washington and Oregon both were this past Saturday. If Washington and Oregon just completely manhandle USC in the trenches, not predicting that will happen, but I will say that there's a significant chance it will happen. If USC just gets completely overwhelmed by both the Huskies and then the Ducks in consecutive weeks, like, if that comes to pass, I would prefer it not, but if it does come to pass, like, we have to reevaluate and question pretty much everything about this coaching staff surrounding Lincoln Riley going into next year.
And then we have another one here from my favorite troll, Why has USC lost the modern day and SoCal pipelines? Is Riley paying more attention to Texas than his backyard? A simple answer here is that I think there's a different philosophy up in Oregon when it comes to recruiting freshmen. It's been said time and time again, hinted at from the staff, that they are not throwing big cash at unproven prospects. Oregon is doing that, and that is helping them land. And I'll tell you what, I just talked about him before this we went live here. What was the name of the offensive lineman that they lost when he was all USC, goes up to Oregon in the 11th hour, they drop a bag on him, now all of a sudden he's all duck. I forgot what his name is. Josh Connerly. How different would this team be right now? Even though we're talking about how hard it is to have a freshman start at tackle, but how different would this team be right now if we have Josh Connerly at left tackle and we slide Monheim over to right tackle? I bet you things were different in South Bend if that had been the case. So, yeah, maybe they need to change the philosophy on that. Maybe we do need to start at least make exceptions for some of these linemen and say, what do they give you in Oregon? We'll double it. There we go. Boom. Just go that route. There's a way to do that as well. But I think it's also, 1 year here and thinking the sky is falling is also a bit extreme. Remember this, all these kids right now that are giving their pledge to go somewhere else lived through the Helton. They were around for the Helton years, and they saw 1 year of Riley, and they're seeing this year. It's going to take some time to turn some of these kids and some of these coaches and some of these families back around to USC, because USC ran itself into the ground for the better part of a decade. They're not the kind of name that we used to be. USC's got to start winning and winning consistently, and then these guys start coming.
Well, and that's why, going 9-3 this season would be a problem, right? One of the things that we've talked about, you and I, Tim, in our off-season shows and in previous weeks, is that, if fans are worried about recruiting and how well that's going, and, USC hasn't had a 24 commit since early July, basically the 4th of July weekend. One of the things we said was, don't worry about the recruiting. As long as USC wins, and prospects get proof of concept, then it's going to be okay. But if USC finishes 9-3 and doesn't even make the Pac-12 championship game, that's not going to be proof of concept. And it's going to create more of an uphill battle. I'm not saying an impossible battle, but it's going to create more of an uphill battle for this staff on the recruiting trail, which would underscore the point that, there need to be new assistants that can upgrade the level of player development and player evaluation to make sure that the best product is on the field in 2024 when USC moves into the Big Ten.
Jalen Harvey also I think it was today, is going to Penn State, not USC. That was a huge rush end issue. But here's what I'm saying. Well, you're talking about, Matt, you're bringing up development and identifying guys. I'm really some of the guys that they've brought in. So I think everyone's just panicking because look at the guys like Solomon Byrd. He was brought in. Jamil Muhammad, he was brought in. So they're going out and they're scouting guys. Those weren't big names, but they showed up here on campus. They've been developed and they're playing out of their minds. So if we're talking development, if we're talking about scouting the right guys, anyone here want to argue picking up Jamil Muhammad and Solomon Byrd? I'd love to talk to you. Go ahead and drop something here so we can have that conversation.